Senator Deakin, Ontario.
2 for 1. I'm not sure how this all works, but Tuesday night is inquiry night. I rise today again to speak to Senator Coyle's inquiry on the final report of the Youth Climate Assembly. I would like to begin by thanking Senator Coyle for kicking off this important discussion in the chamber. I also want to commend the 33 remarkable young Canadians whose thoughtful work brought forward the sophisticated, eloquent, and impressive report before us. We hear you, and we are immensely grateful for your work. This report conveys a clear and powerful message. Reducing our dependence on fossil fuels is essential, and this transition will require innovation. As someone who worked in education and sport with young people, I cannot help but look to the world of sport and our young people as potential leaders in driving this change. Sport at every level is already experiencing the effects of climate change. Each winter, athletes wait for snow to fall with bated breath, hoping there will be enough to support competitions. Their anxieties are far from unfounded. In Cortina, average February temperatures have risen by 4.6 degrees since Italy last hosted the Olympics only 20 years ago. Meanwhile, snowfall levels around the world have steadily declined since the mid-20th century. Summer sports do not escape unscathed. In January, athletes competed in the Australian Open under extreme heat conditions with play suspended as temperatures rose to 40 degrees. In coastal regions, rising sea levels and increased flooding threaten stadiums, playing fields, and venues for beach sports. The evidence is clear. Preserving sport as we know it requires decisive and timely action, and the Climate Assembly's recommendations lay a framework for this action. Young Canadians are calling on governments to invest in retrofits that will strengthen the resilience of existing infrastructure. This recommendation is no less relevant for sport facilities. Progress is already underway with countless projects in progress aiming to improve the sustainability and resilience of sport infrastructure. At the same time, many local and provincial sport organizations are adapting their policies and professional development programs to better protect athletes and address climate risks. Alberta Soccer is a phenomenal example. They have implemented air quality policies requiring officials and coaches to modify play intensity, shorten practice, or even reschedule when air pollution reaches unacceptable levels. But meaningful climate action extends far beyond adapting to rising temperatures. It also means recognizing the role that sport itself plays in contributing to the climate crisis. The professional sports sector alone generates emissions through stadium operations, merchandise productions, and waste management, as well as through the extensive travel required of athletes, employees, and spectators. Work is underway to address this. The recent Olympic Games in Milano Cortina exemplify this environmental impact. Watching from the comfort of our living rooms, it is easy to forget that athletes are not competing always on real snow. While this may have been the case decades ago, declining snowfall levels have made it increasingly rare. Today, Olympic ski runs, half pipes, and snow parks owe more to water from springs, valley rivers, and dam reservoirs than to freshly fallen snow. There is a challenge here. Climate change makes it more difficult to host winter sporting events, which in turn pushes organizers to intensify artificial snow production. Ultimately, this diverts water resources and damages local ecosystems in the process. Colleagues, I believe deeply in the power of sport. It brings people together across national, cultural, linguistic, and religious lines. But the unity and joy the sport fosters should never come at the expense of the planet that we share. Fortunately, it does not have to. Not only can sport be sustainable, but it is also uniquely positioned to demonstrate that decarbonization is both achievable and necessary. Few other sectors can claim the same global reach, demographic diversity, or ability to inspire collective action. Encouragingly, many parts of the sporting world have taken up the mantle. Major leagues are pursuing sponsorships aligned with environmental, social, and governance standards. Athletes are increasingly speaking out as advocates for sustainability. Recreational facilities are being retrofitted with climate-smart technologies. The International Olympic Committee has been addressing sustainability for several decades. Prince Albert II of Monaco, a 5-time Olympian, presently chairs the Commission for Sustainability resiliency and legacy. While you have heard about the challenges, the Milano Cortina Olympics were still perhaps the most sustainable in Olympic history. 85% of the infrastructure used was pre-existing. They developed sport clusters. They used public transportation, reducing the use of private cars, made Olympic medals from recycled metals, ensured that 20,000 items from the Games will be reused, and plan on restoring the game sites back to their natural state. While the final data still needs to be assessed, organizers also pledged that 100% of game time electricity would be drawn from renewable resources, reflecting one of the Youth Assembly's central recommendations, accelerating the transition to clean energy. Canada is also making strides. Municipal infrastructure projects such as Vancouver's Hillcrest Centre and Richmond Oval, the Olympic Oval, Halifax's Canada Game Centre, and Toronto's Net Zero Carbon Community Recreation Centre demonstrate how climate-smart infrastructure can make sport more sustainable, energy efficient, and resilient. I'm so proud of Mr. Shea Smith, he's not so young anymore, a former, but still youthful, a former Canadian Summer Athletics sprinter and a winter bobsled team member. He's used his platform, he's incredible, and a professional background to bridge the gap between high-level sport and environment action. In fact, he has founded a company called Racing to Zero that offers sustainable education, carbon inventories, and sustainable strategy support to local, regional, and national sport organizations in Canada. And the Canada Games Council, who run games, as we know, in our communities every few years for young people, they have also been very, very busy. They've been able to build capacity and integrate sustainability into their overall practices. They launched an environmental sustainable strategy in the spring of 2025 and now work with all their host societies on initiatives to reduce the impact on the environment over the course of the Games life cycle, from vision, planning, execution, and follow-up. In 2019, the Canada Games joined the United Nations Sport for Climate Action Framework as the first Canadian signatory. To this day, CGC remains committed to this framework, which unites sports organizations globally to play their part in responsible climate action. Since 2022, Canada Summer Games have been monitoring the GHG emissions related to hosting its event in Canada, including carbon offsets related to participant travel, annual emissions of the franchise holder, and most recently, game-wide emission measurements for the 2025 Canada Games in St. John's, Newfoundland. Coming up in 2027, the Games will be in Quebec City, and they'll be using all of this data, including detailed recommendations towards having a Games with as low an emissions as possible. Honourable Senators, if there's one point I hope resonates from my remarks today, it is this one. We cannot overlook sport as we consider the Assembly's recommendations. Decarbonizing the sports sector is essential, not only because it is an emitter in its own right, but because the very future of sport depends on it. And perhaps most importantly, because it has the power to inspire others to follow its lead. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.